let's call the meeting to order. It's 6 o'clock. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's June 16, 2021 revised order, this meeting of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District School Committee will be conducted both in person and remote. In-person attendance will be limited to Berkshire Hills Regional School District School Committee members, superintendent, and all district school administrators. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted at this time. However, the meeting may be accessed remotely through Zoom and or Facebook. Agenda items listed are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, and not all items listed may in fact be discussed. Those items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. This meeting is being recorded by CTSB and the school committee recorder and will be broadcast. Once transcribed and approved, minutes will be made public and posted to our website. So let's start off with a roll call. Ann Hutchinson.
Aye.
Jason St. Peter.
Aye.
Bonnie Bond Stefani.
Here.
Bill Fields.
Aye.
Molly Thomas.
Aye.
Diane Singer.
Here.
Corey Sprague.
Aye.
Rich Mahoney.
Aye.
And I'm here, so it makes everyone on the school committee is here. And we can turn it right over to the superintendent's report.
Okay.
My name? Did I miss that?
Did I miss you?
Yes, Sean.
Sorry, Sean.
God, I feel left out now.
I'll send you flowers tomorrow.
I'll look for it.
Okay. So we'll start with some building-based stuff. We're looking forward to the holiday break, and I'll send out, I think, tomorrow a note to families about where we are with COVID and other things and some reminders. And I'll talk a little bit about that more in the COVID-19 section. Katie, some exciting things to share. I know you guys had some field trips and some other things going on.
Yeah, we did. We have the Berkshire Museum. The kindergarten went to the Berkshire Museum, and the mowing was scary. What I heard. We have, every group has had the opportunity to do the turkey trek, which goes through the cross-country trails, and they found 25 turkeys and Tom, which is a huge fleet of turkey. We have the Stoke folks are going to come to the elementary school through the month of December to gather some more elementary specific feedback that seemed to be missing from the original work. So they'll be interviewing teachers and holding a parent forum. We're working on some way to get some student voice, at least from our 3rd and 4th graders. How that can be done, we haven't quite worked out, but we're meeting again after the holidays. We have a couple of grants in the work for some interesting activities. Yoga for kindergarten is going to start. They'll be having a weekly yoga class by instructor, 8790 security grant through Donors Choose. We're working with Iona to get, as the other schools are, I believe, to get some drumming program, which just to enhance, the emotional and social functioning of kiddos. They have done some of it in our building for their music class, but this secures the proper equipment and to enhance it. And we have decided for our proficiency work, we're working in the area of social emotional learning, building on some work that they had done on a continuum early on. And also, I have recently found out that we can use proficiencies and look at our report card as well. It is a standards-based report card, but whether we can pull it together differently to reflect proficiencies in a different way, we'll look into that. So that's the news from my work.
Great.
At the middle school, coming up pretty soon in the middle of December, on December 14th and 15th, the student-led conferences. I'm really excited about that. Students and teachers chose really a piece of learning from each of their classes, English class, science class, art class, all the different classes, and reflected on it. What does this show about my progress in this particular class? What have I done well? Then all of those have been collected over the past couple of weeks into the crews. The crew leader is now coaching the kids on how to put all those into a compendium of, hey, this is who I am as a learner, and this is what I've done well, and this is what I've learned, and this is where I can grow. And then putting together a presentation. And what's great about that is then on the evening of the 14th and the afternoon of the 15th, families make an appointment with the crew leader, and the student presents to the family kind of who they are as a learner and development. It's pretty powerful. We did a pilot, as I said, last year in the winter, and it went really well. And this is happening 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I'm really excited to see how this rolls out this year. Also, we've wrapped up our Panorama Survey with students. This is the second time we've done it. We did it in the spring, and we did it again this fall. It's amazing now that we have 2 administrations of it, where you can really see students' growth or kind of backtracking in terms of kind of social emotional aspects, who they are. And it really helps us. I can see that we've efforts that we're making with students to intervene and support are having some success, or areas where students who we think are doing well really need some help. It helps us build social skills groups and identify kids for counseling, but also just really gives us an understanding of, are we doing what we say we want to do? And the staff just yesterday, our faculty meeting, took the staff version. It's an anonymous survey, but it's really great because they are aligned surveys. So it's really exciting to have data that we can look at that really connects between student and staff experience. Proficiency-based learning, we're moving ahead in a lot of areas. I want to highlight a really fun one that a team is doing with their kids in 7th and 8th grade, where they're going to have a pillow fort contest. I think I'm heading off to Thanksgiving. The idea actually is that the students wrote the rubric for the pillow fort on safety, comfort, and style. But the nice thing about it is it really just gets kids to own what they have to do and understand the outcomes, and then that's going to be applied, of course, as they, their social studies, math, and English classes as they start to be involved in building rubrics as well. A bunch of clubs are really happening. Our librarian has started a 5th and 6th grade book club. There'll soon be a 7th and 8th grade one. We have a gaming club going on in 7th and 8th grade. Soon I hope to do the 5th and 6th grade. Once we hire some more Paris, so we can not be the 5th grade lunch monitor. And then the Gender and Sexuality Alliance has been going strong for several months. That's really been a great experience for a lot of kids. We thought it would be a bunch. It turns out it's about 2 or 3 times a bunch of kids. And that's pretty exciting because there's a big need for that. That's open to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And we soon will be starting our student council, and as well as some of our peer leadership programs, I think, in the new year. So between the Thanksgiving and December break, we will start to recruit kids. So it's the middle school.
Cool, thanks. So Julian, we'll start with
Yeah.
you, and we'll let Christy clean up
I must
whatever's left over.
apologize. I've just gotten off the road from a college visit, so I don't have a ton, but there have been a lot of great things happening at the high school. So it's not too hard to sort of just give a recap. Today, the people in the environments class are on another one of their trips. If you're not familiar, it's sort of a class that combines a lot of outdoor science and environmental science and history, and they go on backpacking trips. So they left for that trip today, which is a really exciting thing to be able to do again. Really, school feels back to normal, which is a really amazing thing. Last week we had a pep rally, which was really successful. We're really thankful to the administration for allowing that to happen. A lot of fun happened and not too many injuries. Really, really great things are happening. Sports are wrapping up. I think the only team left with competitions to come is the cross-country team. The girls cross-country team qualified for states, I think for the first time in 20 years, which is a really amazing thing. One boy is going to be representing Monument at the state championship, and then the football team ended with a winning record, which is another sort of monumental thing. Girls and boys soccer both did very well. Fall Fest happened this past weekend. They're actually performing tonight at the Shakespeare and Company. So everyone's really having an opportunity to do what they love. And that's a really great thing. Yeah.
Great.
All right. Am I gonna also do the data right now? Because it's not on the agenda, so.
Yeah, it is on the agenda, so you don't have to do it now.
Okay, so a few more things to add to what Julian already shared. It is a big deal. We did complete our Mcas retests this week, and there were a handful of opt-ins of upperclassmen who were taking it to qualify for scholarship opportunities. It wasn't required for seniors, but some students did opt in, and that completed. Tomorrow, I'm particularly excited about the launch of our student advisory board. So every one of our crews selected a student to be a representative. And tomorrow we'll have over 50 students in the library at the high school for the morning, where we're going to run through some protocols for students to have conversations about hot topics among the student body and identify 3 or 4 topics that they'll break into some subgroups and over the course of the next several months work with adults in the building to address.
No, it's restarting. Keep going.
Okay. I'm sorry. And I do want to highlight this Sunday, 6 p.m. We do have our National Honor Society induction taking place. And so we'll be having a celebration of those students who will be inducted into the National Honor Society.
Great. Thank you very much. Sorry, one of our owls was not happy, and I think we're okay now. So what I'd like to do is take a little bit of time, and maybe enlist John in this too, just to go over our district improvement plan. So every year we share a district improvement plan. We try to write that plan as a 3-year plan. You've had a chance to review it in the packet. It's on our website in the school committee packet. It'll be on our website more broadly. And I'd like to sort of go over it on a high level and then address a couple details and then respond to any questions people have. So we're really trying to make things simple and not kill people with a million initiatives. And we're articulating 3 areas of focus for the next 3 years. So the first one is around supporting kids and being successful, particularly around the work of our portrait of a graduate. And that's tied to proficiency areas and what those are, and what those look like. I'll pause there for a sec. I mean, I think there's a lot of good detail here. So we'll start with grades 4, 8, and 12, and that'll then trickle down into, if you need to be here in 4th grade, then in 2nd grade, you need to be there, and in 1st grade, and other things like that, right? These are some of the skills and competencies you would be demonstrating. We've tried to split this up. Different people and different roles have different functions connected to this. So that's and it's complex, right? Because it's tied to assessment and how do we give students an opportunity to demonstrate their growth. What kind of work do we do with teachers to help them frame these things? What kind of supports do they need? I'll pause there for a sec. Any questions about that first goal?
I have an overall comment, but it can wait.
If it's overall, let's wait, and we'll do it. We'll do it on everything. The second one is really around teacher leadership and building a professional culture. We try not to be too jargony, but there is a little bit of stuff in there, right? Instructional leads and team coordinators. And this is around distributed leadership and empowering staff as leaders within the building, and continuing and supporting some of the really good work that they're doing. When you see SIP reference, it's a school improvement plan. Lots on professional development, and at some point, the instructional leads will play a role in structuring and shaping the professional development of their peers. The tail end of this part is also around student leadership and students having voice in it. So I'll pause there for a sec. Questions about that one?
I know when we had done the policy about diversity and recruitment, there was a part about inclusion in the student improvement plan. So I understand why it's not here, but I would think for the goal number 2 here, there would be some emphasis on diversifying and development of our professional staff.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a really good comment. So let me play around with it.
Yeah, no,
But it's a good one and a little oversight. Other thoughts on that? Okay, so the final one is really around better communication. A lot of that is tied up in our evolving use of Parent Square. We'll also are going to start doing some work to rebuild the district's website. That's a legacy from Rich Bradway when he was on the school committee, and it's functional, but it doesn't really capture the depth and complexity of what we're trying to do. And for some, like, I can navigate around it because I helped build it, but for somebody trying to find something, it's not our best gateway to the district. So I think this time we'll bring in some outside people to help us frame it. Interestingly, the school websites are markedly better because they deal in the domains of day-to-day stuff, and the district one needs more work. Though I think after we get through the district one, we can use that to inform the school websites.
I would vote that we look at all of them together. I mean, it's fine to prioritize, but I think there should be consistency.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of families with kids across districts, you've got, across schools, and I would vote that even if we're only focusing right now on the district, that it's being looked at in a larger context of all the schools as well.
Yeah, so that's fair. And then the other things that aren't like website specific, but they're seen on the website. One of the things we've really started looking at is if you're a new student to the district, there's not a clear homepage and path about what you need to do. You could sort of piece things together, call a bunch of secretaries, meet with the principal and infer it. And there should be a place where a new native speaker of English could do it pretty easily, and a new non-native speaker of English could also do it pretty easily. So some more there. Yeah, so that's where we are. I like Rich's comment a lot on building in some work around DEI and opening up things in the second section. Corey, you had some overarching comments?
I think the overarching thought that I had that would be helpful to me, maybe not possible, but the way you've got the columns of activities, responsibility, measurable outcomes, to actually put in there and fit in the initiatives and where the various initiatives that we've got going on fit into these plans. Because I feel like it helps in terms of communication. It helps keep us honest to make sure that the things that we're doing are actually best serving what we're trying to accomplish. So, things like whether it's STOPE, whether it's restorative justice, whether it's all the different acronyms we've got going on for social and emotional learning. But I think that would help and potentially even allow us to start to, cull if necessary, where where maybe things are duplicative or they're not serving us in this very moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I'd like to play around with it a little bit. So from a presentation standpoint, it might be this, so this doesn't seem overwhelming. And then a separate page for each goal where the things are listed. But let me play around, I'll come back to you.
I understand, so we're just reviewing the sort of the draft of this, but I'm just wondering, when will we sort of get an update? Because there's definitely a lot of sort of goals that are set for January 2022, or goals that have passed, or things coming up in the spring. So at some point, can you sort of just share how we're doing in terms of progress, right? Because these are all really great goals, but at the end of the day, it's about what we accomplish.
Yeah, so presumably the updates are ongoing through the course of the year. And then the shift in the draft annual report is to have a formal reporting on them in writing at the close of each academic year. But that probably means, with the exception of this year, because we're drafting the first version of it, but that probably means in a normal year, October, November. So I think those are the recurring things. I would even be open, and I defer to the chair on this, if I think it's highly likely that every meeting we touch on some of these, but if we wanted to have the 3 goals as explicit things on every agenda or every other agenda, and then we could formally reference them on a regular basis, that might be useful too. And maybe not every meeting, but every other meeting. I don't want to spend all our time reporting out on stuff, because I don't think it'd be terribly productive, but some of our time would be.
Would that be useful, or is there a time where we could choose and actually go over the whole plan to talk about where we are vis-a-vis where we had hoped to be?
Well, I mean, we could do it too in the context of a meeting prefer.
Yeah, we haven't done that one time.
Right.
We used to do that.
And we do have dates within, I mean, January 2022. Okay, within that month, we could say, okay, let's go over the draft of the proficiency areas. We could do that.
Yeah,
If that's what Julian is referring to, maybe.
Crosswalk into each meeting,
Right.
right? March 22.
And how, what you said, Corey, where are some specifics under that are being acted on? That's what I think that would give more specificity for each point, instead of kind of, I think what Julian is saying is not just general, but okay, you know, what are we actually doing at this point? How are things, and where is the progress?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think these line up very nicely, the
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
So the second meeting in January, we could look at where we are in relation to this. And sometimes we'll be ahead and sometimes we'll be a little behind. Yeah, cool. All right, that's good. Any other thoughts, anybody? All right, so I'll play around with this and bring it back for another round, and then with a little luck, at the next round we approve it. The principals and their staffs are also working on school improvement plans tied to this, and eventually they'll bring those too.
Are these advisory councils, what are they, the parent councils, by law, or the school councils, what they call them? Are they involved working with us too?
So I'm assuming you're asking all 3 of us.
All 3.
I've talked to parents for school council, and I've had one parent respond to me after multiple attempts. I've been brainstorming internally about better ways to engage parents in the work at the high school. It's a challenge, but we have some new ideas. But because I've only had one parent respond to be involved, they haven't really been collaborative on our school improvement plan to date.
How about the other 2? Have you had?
Yeah, our school council's really working on all 3 with the family.
Okay.
We haven't started yet.
Okay, great. So the next thing, and this is a short one, And I just wanted to say this publicly and enlist the school committee's support on this. Now that the weather's getting a little colder, some people are a little reluctant to follow our drop-off procedure for the high school at the Muddy Brook parking lot by the greenhouse. And folks are coming up with every possible creative way under the sun to drive their kid up to the high school. The whole reason we implemented this, and I'll send a letter to high school families to remind them of this, was to keep fewer cars coming in and out of the high school parking lot so it would be safer, and particularly so buses could get in and out in a timely manner and our buses could work. So 70% of the people are doing a wonderful job and dropping their kids off at the Muddy Brook lot, and they walk up the hill, and that's fine. And we could all use the exercise, and it's good. And 30 or 25% of the people are doing a terrible job and playing games with Sarah Mead, who's there, and occasionally we have a police officer there, driving around on the grass, pretending they're going into the parking lot to park and dropping their kids, and then sneaking out. If your kid is on crutches, drive them to the door of the school. If they built the Leaning Tower pizza out of toothpicks, don't make them walk up the hill. But short of one of those things, we should be walking up the hill. I talked to Chief Storty, and like, I don't want to encourage him to ticket people who are doing the wrong thing, but that's where I'm at on this. It's a health or safety issue. It's an issue around transportation, and I've got staff people out there standing who are in danger because somebody's driving a 4,000 to 5,000 pound car poorly.
Yeah, and I just want to add, at this point, we also have 3 vans that are dropping off our, most medically frail students in front of the school during that time. And there have been multiple occasions that the vans have been parked with their lights on, with the stop sign out, and other people have driven up, dropped students off and driven past the vans. So that's another whole level of.
Right. So, and those are kids in wheelchairs or with walkers with like terribly life-threatening, immunocompromised, arthritic conditions. So
I think from just hearing that example, I don't see any reason not to encourage the police to ticket. And I think if we were to be ticketing for 2 weeks, I think people would stop pretty quickly. Because I don't think there should be any reason that we don't, right? If people are blatantly not following the rules and are aware that they shouldn't be going up there, I don't see any reason not to ticket people.
all right, we're on the same page.
All right, yeah.
Can I just clarify my question, because there are a lot of early morning meetings happening, and so this becomes a point of debate in my car in the morning. Is there a hard time where it's up until where it's allowed and then not allowed?
So my hard times are between the time of 7:30 and 8 o'clock, and no one should be driving in the car with the building. If it's before 7:30, it's fine.
Perfect.
If it's somebody's coming late because they had a dentist appointment, and it's after the 8 o'clock mark, it's fine.
But we don't want people to come late just to
Yeah.
skip the hill.
Yeah.
I make my 14-year-old walk the hill
Yeah.
regardless of the time.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Should there be a sign out there that says no student access, 7:30 to 8 o'clock?
No parent calls, no parent access.
Just no
drop-off. I don't know what the
unauthorized
right-
access.
Signage is a good thing for all any kind of parking and traffic control, so like,
Yeah, let me think a little bit about that, and let me talk to Chief Storty a little bit about that.
It's just hard because in that moment, by the time you see the sign, you've
already
already made your
It's true, but
decision or not,
The next time,
Yeah.
you put the sign out there for a week, everybody's seen the sign, and then you start putting a police officer.
Yeah, the reason for the sign really is for when someone says, I didn't know.
Right.
And at least the sign's there, how would you not know?
Okay. So not my favorite topic, but it is what it is, and we'll work on it. So the next one is and Bill asked us to put this on last time, which is where we are with the MSBA, a building project and potential next steps. So as luck would have it, at 3:20 today, I received an email from the MSBA saying that recommendations for invitation into the eligibility period will occur at their Wednesday, March 2nd Board of Directors meeting. So previously we had thought we might hear something in November or December, but now they're continuing our due diligence in the next few months, either by letter or phone call, indicating the need to refile or to hold for refiling as we are proceeding with a recommendation to our board of directors, right? So please share this with your, with other local officials. So you're the officials, I'm sharing it with you. I've reached out to them. There are lots of different ways to read it, right? But being the eternal optimist that I am, I read that we're still in the running, not that we're done. I hope to set up a call shortly and get some additional feedback. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is, and this may change that a little bit, is about a year ago, you wanted to be ready to do something, whether it was with the MSBA's support or on our own. And we presented some materials around that and what that might look like. I would recommend with this change to March, we potentially delay that till March. But instead of, the year ago you said, let's be ready to do something in December. I wonder if you are comfortable saying, let's be ready to do something in March. And we can talk about that. The other thing that potentially we might want to do is, if it's an MSBA project or if it's our own project, to either set aside or borrow money to do design work, and potentially have that be voted on at the 3/10 meetings in May.
Yeah, I think what we would do would be to talk to the 3 towns finance committees and select boards so that we're all on the same page. And I think it should be voted on in May, but just see how each town wants to do it, or they want to do it the same. But yeah, I definitely think it should be on the, otherwise either we're going to wait another year, which is not what we want to do, or we're going to ask for a special town meeting, which never comes out well.
No.
It costs the towns thousands of dollars, and you never know what's going to happen at special town meeting. So yes, we should be ready for May, but I think we should also have a subgroup meet with the finance committees and select board when we're ready to talk about how we're going to frame this in May.
Okay.
Should we do I know I said it last time tonight, and I never followed up with Jay, should we do a joint Buildings and Grounds Finance Committee meeting over the next couple of weeks?
Yes.
To put together the communications plan for them?
Yep.
And also to, I think what Peter described is kind of where everybody else has been at. That we got to be ready to go with funding in place for study design coming out in, next year's town meetings. So, and that doesn't really necessarily line up with the March date. I mean, I think we're gonna, unfortunately, administration is having to put some work into preparing just for that option, either way.
Well, we're going to have to do that whether we go with the MSBA or not.
Exactly.
So it does really line up.
Yeah,
Because if the MSBA says yes, well, we're ahead of the game.
yeah,
We're ready. And if they say, no, we're ready to go anyways.
yeah.
Now, Rich brought up a couple of meetings ago that this puts a lot of stress on Peter and Sharon. And I would like to see.
And Steve too.
Steve.
He gets some stress, and Christie for that
And
matter.
I would like to see what can we do to add personnel to help them. And that's something maybe that is not, and we didn't talk about that in our finance committee meeting. And I am thinking about it now. I think it's unfair for just the 3 of you and Rich brought it up, and I've been thinking about it, that we really do, and I want to see this by town meeting, that we're gonna be involved in having people look at a design and having something really to go, no matter March come or whatever. I mean, we're on the road.
So Bill, you're right, and we're gonna have to have the John Winokur role.
Right.
filled. So you're absolutely right, whether we do that as part of the borrowing
Right.
or not, and actually, this is the time, we're gonna meet with a joint meeting, it's a little soon, that we need advice. Everyone remembers that that role was someone who represented both the MSBA and the school district. They had kind of like an inside track, that's how it was set up. We're gonna need that advice sooner than later.
But even the consultant side is definite, and we may want to do more on the consultant side this time around. But I don't know if this is what you're referencing, but even in addition to that, do we need some internal staffing? I mean, is it just like an additional administrative person that is just the administrative person for this? So that,
That's what I would see.
I mean, there's just a lot of paper that's got to move with these guys once this stuff gets going, and
Yeah, no, I mean,
meeting scheduled and calls to be made and stuff like that. It's a huge lift.
I think that would be really appreciated, because the maybe not so secret is the running and managing a school system right now is like, and teaching in a school system, every role, right? Being a custodian of the school system and food service in the context of COVID, like people are working very hard, but they're hanging on. So exponentially increasing our workload without a little bit of support would be a mistake.
So, I think you should come back to us, you and Sharon, with a proposal.
Right.
And Steve.
Well,
And Christie.
I was looking at this a financial.
No.
He's gonna benefit from it as he should, but from the financial point of view, we'll put it in next year's budget, do we need it sooner? Is there a line we can use starting in February to fund it until next year's budget's in place? Those type of things.
Yeah.
Is it possible that by March, we could have, again, Rich at that meeting talked about looking at consultants that are not just school-based, but also who have done public buildings, whatever that public building may be, and looking at having somebody on board by March?
That would be the clerk of the, what was John's title? I shouldn't use his name.
Owner's project manager.
Owner's project manager. I'm not suggesting him, I'm not suggesting him, but.
By March, could we, again, going to what Julian said about being kind of more specific, is it possible that we could agree that by March, this person is in place and we've got some personnel on board? So whatever the decision, we can then go from there and go to the town meeting.
No,
I would love that, but I think we're gonna borrow money to fund that position.
Yeah.
As well as to fund the actual architect engineer to design the thing.
Right.
But what we might do, and I think we talked about this a couple months ago, is, and then there's a whole like procurement selection process for that person. But in the short term, if we're under the right threshold, we could hire somebody as a consultant to help us advance some of the work and frame the bigger.
Maybe this is a little naive, and I also wonder if we hire someone as a consultant well before March, could they help us? Is there anything we can do to help for the March decision? Have we done everything we've done? As someone who knows the inner workings of the MSBA, is there, have we dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's so that we don't come out of that if we get turned down saying, well, we should have done this?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And it may be good for somebody else to do it. I may be on the stalker list soon.
You probably are.
Contact to that office.
Yeah.
But just because this is our one chance, we're not, we've made the decision as a school committee. We get turned down this time, we're doing it on our own.
Yeah.
And so let's make sure we've done everything we can, including attending the March meeting, whether it's remote or in person, depending what they allow.
Yeah, but my assumption, and I think this is true, is They're not deciding at the March meeting, they're deciding at the January working group meeting or the February meeting. So while it's not a bad idea to go to the March meeting, it's probably more important to go to the February or the
Are those
January.
open meetings?
I don't know.
I've noticed their agendas, they're putting a call-in number on there now.
So
They're still meeting remotely. There was a meeting yesterday, you know, we obviously weren't on it, another school district was.
Whatever we can do now, we should.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
No, that sounds
And,
good. So,
and it's also harder to say no to us, not that they won't, if we're in person, at least we'll make them feel bad.
Yeah, I think what Peter said is like, that March meeting is like the, kind of the coronation. It's
Yeah.
like the-
Right.
yeah.
I think the decision.
Sausage's big thing right now.
Actually, I think we went to that for the other schools. We went to a number of meetings down there.
Yeah.
So that,
Have
they
they-
can get us in or not get us in.
They used to bring a team out. Has that, Steve, do you know anything about that?
they visited within 2 years, they did
Yeah.
another.
Well, they
visit.
visited, last year, right? Or the year,
2 years.
the year
2
before?
years.
Before the pandemic.
So there's the possibility that they may do another visit, but I also think their information's very current.
Right.
And they also have all the information from the unsuccessful votes and the projects then,
And then
and
the changes since then.
right, and not a whole lot. I mean,
Right.
Steve has done a lot of work and his guys have been keeping the building going, but not from a project standpoint, not a lot's changed.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. Okay.
Okay.
So we should, so maybe we should, it can't hurt to do a finance building ground subcommittee meeting in the next couple of weeks,
Yes.
where we talk about fleshing out what it is we're, more specifically, what we're looking for the administration to have ready to go for the
Yes.
town meetings. But maybe we do better on the idea of hiring a consultant now.
Yes.
This is not the full staff, consultant now to help us get over the finish line with the MSBA.
Right.
And if, A, if that's a good idea, B, what it looks like, and C, do we even have the money to pay for it anyways?
Right.
But we can at least put that on the agenda to talk about.
Okay.
One of the first things that we had to do the first time around, which I would assume we're probably going to have to do again, is to select a building committee.
Yes.
That is not the Buildings and Grounds Committee, but there were very specific parameters with regard to how many of these types of people that were on that committee. That we could do between now and March. And they could assist with hiring a consultant and or an owner's project manager in March. You know, we can get it all together and start working on the job, what we're gonna advertise. Then whether it's yay or nay, we're gonna go that route anyway, because that's the first thing that we're gonna need to do.
Yeah, that's
hire
smart.
an owner's project manager.
Yeah, and that consultant can help us form this committee because you're right, they're very, very specific.
Right.
Well, I mean, it was like
Changed
a
little bit,
a
but-
local architect, a school committee member, a select board member.
Contractor.
Right.
And I'm guessing it might have changed a little, but I would also think that that's pretty readily available.
Yeah, and whatever project we did, if we were doing an MSBA project, it's required,
Correct.
but it's required because it's thoughtful and deliberate. It wouldn't be bad to use it in our own.
Yeah, that's the same.
Yeah, that's a good one, Steve.
I think we should be doing as much as possible to kind of go in good faith with this go it alone plan, because I feel like when we talked about this late winter, early spring, we were marching towards this and assuming that we were going to be ready to flip the switch, hearing a decision around now. And so if the MSBA had stuck to their original timeline, we are very much not in a position to do that. So to me, this email, hard to follow that, but you get my point.
Right.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
Yep.
Yeah, it's time to move on.
It's on. Yep.
Okay. So the next one, and I think this will be really interesting. So, and Chris, if it's okay with you, I'll give a little context and then we'll transition to it. Where the ninth grade team and the ninth grade teachers are working really hard to support this initiative there, right? The de-leveling, the reconfiguration of stuff. And part of what we promised we'd do is report back regularly to the school committee. So Christy's going to share one cut of data, and she'll give context for it, explain it, and we can have a big conversation about it. And that'll be a piece of it. And then subsequent data will include some student responses to how things are going, right? So tonight we're at like 20,000 feet structural stuff. And then at a future meeting, we'll drill down to some student thinking about stuff. We're also, several people mentioned the Panorama work and other surveys. So there's all this other data collection that we have, but let me let Christy start talking to you about the chunk of data we have now.
Can I share my screen?
I think so. Does it let you or no?
No.
Can you just do that?
I know someone you could ask.
I was.
Okay, screen share is open. Screen share is open.
That's what that other thing.
Okay. So some context to what we're looking at. We decided in preparation for the end of the first quarter, we wanted to look at enrollment data when students were signing up for honors and college prep courses. And what we did was we pulled that information for the past 3 years. And we pulled all of the demographic information for the students from 2018 through 2021. And we grouped the data that we received. We asked for the 4 core subject areas: English, science, math, and social studies for 9th grade, enrollment and honors and college prep, and then the demographic data for that. And then we grouped it: students who were enrolled in 1 or 2 honors courses, students who were enrolled in 3 or 4, and then we could see students that weren't taking any honors courses at all. Again, just the 4 core subject areas. So the first thing we looked at, because this was data that we had actually talked about last year when this proposal was made, was the differences that we were seeing in our high needs subgroup compared to non-high needs subgroup of students in their outcomes over time. And so we wanted to look at this data in that context, and that's what this first graphic is showing. Please remember that high need means that a student has any 1 or more classification as a student on an IEP, one of our special education students, an English language learner or former English language learner, or a student who is in our low income category, economically disadvantaged. So as you can see, not surprisingly to those of us who've looked at this internally, our non-high need students taking 3 or 4 honors courses, and this is the average over the 3 years, we had 66% versus our high need students, 37%. For 1 or 2 courses, interestingly, it was the same, and students taking no honors courses in the 4 core areas for non-high needs was 17% versus high needs, which is 47%. At the bottom of this page is the information we literally just pulled this week. So report cards went out today. And if you recall with our proposal, students haven't earned honors. It's just reporting out if they are on track for honors distinction. So being on track now doesn't guarantee a student's going to get the distinction, and not being on track doesn't preclude them from earning honors distinction at the end of this year. This is very preliminary data. Literally, we did just get it this week, but we wanted to do the same kind of comparison. So in this chart, you'll see the 3-year averages from above compared to our first quarter data. for our high needs students compared to our non-high needs students. And the data kind of speaks for itself. We have our high needs students with no honors is actually a higher percentage, but we also have an increase in percentage of high needs students who are on track for 1 or 2 honors credits. We have an increase in our non-high needs students that are on track for 1 or more, and a drop in not being on track for any honors. And this is, again, the 4 core areas. We had our very first meeting looking at this data today. So I think right now we're in a place where we have a lot of questions internally, right? This is real-time work that teachers are engaged in terms of trying to figure out on the ground, what things are working, what shifts are they making for second quarter. We don't know what kind of impact it's going to have that report cards just went out, and parents now have confirmation whether their students are being identified as on track or not. Will that likely increase it for second quarter or not? These are all questions that we have to see play out over time.
And Chrissy, just to add that the other thing, the previous 3 years data reflects how students were scheduled, but it doesn't reflect whether they passed those classes or not.
So this is the enrollment, not the
Outcome. Right.
Which at the end of the year, that was one of the things we talked about today, is actually looking at success rates in honors versus CP. If we do that, one of the caveats that we're going to have to think about in terms of the data is how do we look at last year? Because obviously the grading practices, the instruction, everything was so different last year that we might want to exclude last year's data, or maybe we do a run where we include it and then exclude it and see if there's any difference in the data. It was one of the things we were talking about, the impact of that. The other thing we were talking about this year is, one of the strong arguments to move in this direction is the idea of improving the quality and access for everyone. And that, part of it is about the outcome and part of it is about the learning experience. So I would liken it to providing that the experience is a rigorous one for all, which is the goal, right? Like an AP course. It's not necessarily about if the student gets a 5 on the AP exam, but the act of being a participant in an AP course and the preparation that provides a student in terms of college work. We could think about this in a similar fashion. And so we want to definitely look at outcomes, but there's other components of the work that we want to consider as well. So.
And there's that analogy we were talking about it today. There's a lot of research. Like when people take AP classes, everybody gets all wound up about getting a 4 or 5. But there's a lot of research that says the experience of being in the class, whether you get a 1 or a 5, is meaningful in and of itself. And that if all students could do that once, we would be in a much better place. Everybody, right, than we are now.
And the key, as we all know, the goal is that we want to make sure all students are actually being challenged at the level that they should be, right? And so that's part of the work on the ground that's happening. Second quarter, the 9th grade team is very committed to really sharing more student work with one another in terms of alignment and getting a sense of, if I'm saying that this work of a particular student is exemplary, is that what the other teacher in the same subject area, different subject area, is that do they feel the same about that? Or is one person, judging something to be exemplary that another teacher actually would put in the proficient category? And those are things that actually on the ground are being discussed and kind of aligned to one another, right? We have to work on alignment there. So.
And the other thing, I feel pretty good about the 3-year data, though the COVID years weird outlier year. The first quarter data is really a snapshot and a moment in time. And some kids who weren't doing honors level work will step up, and some kids who started doing it will step down. So this data set will be much more meaningful at the end of the second quarter, or the end of the first semester.
The other
You're
comment.
still dealing with such a discrete group though, like I would caution against using, but we've committed this to the long term.
Yeah.
You know, and like 1 year, one class, like,
Yeah.
you know, we can't react too heavily to one day. It's a good or bad.
Yeah.
Agreed, but
Right.
we have, but I do think looking at it together so that we can ask the right questions and make adjustments where we think we need to make adjustments is an important part of the process.
Totally
So,
agree.
one of the other things that came up today that I thought was an interesting part of our conversation was, students having more voice and control in terms of the decision-making of going after the honors distinction. And, you know, finding their areas of passion that they're connecting with more. And especially as we expand this out beyond these 4 core content areas, I think that we could see some real benefit there, so. And the second page, even internally as a team, we did not dig into this as much, but we definitely found it interesting. We broke this down by gender. And so we have at the top, high needs students and whether or not they're in honors classes or no honors classes. And at the bottom, the non-high needs students, what stands out pretty dramatically is the high percentage of males in our high needs subgroups that are, this is our 3-year average, this is not this year, but the high percentage of males that were not enrolled in any honors courses. We talked a lot internally about the connection of student behavior and the impact on placement in courses, that it oftentimes is not about academic ability, but the student's ability to regulate and be compliant. And it's, you know, that's just my projection. So yes, sorry.
Well, I think just to add though, I mean, I think this is a societal, I mean, countrywide, I mean, just seeing the recent data for college, I mean, 60% of college students are women now, 40% men.
right.
So I think it's a systemic failure regarding this, that's been going on for decades, to be honest with you. I think it's just manifesting in our schools, but I think it's happening, obviously, countrywide.
Well, I think part of it too is traditional academic success often aligns with compliance, right? So having a better definition of what demonstrating mastery looks like may make room for people who are less compliant to actually show that they're getting it and that they're doing interesting things with it.
I mean, the counter argument is that there were elements of the prior system which had elements of a meritocracy to it, and it provided an avenue for women to achieve and succeed, and we're now cutting that off to some degree, you know.
I don't know if we're cutting it off, we're enlarging.
Hopefully that's the case.
Yeah.
That's the case.
Enlarging the room.
But this is not an idea that came to my mind. I talked to a lot of girls who go to the school, and there's some, you know, sentiment that this is an anti-feminist decision.
I just have one procedural question. You made a comment about how there might be an increase when report cards come out. Is there a way to see on PowerSchool throughout the quarter that you're on track to earn honors, or is it sort of you're having to do your own calculations? If I have these grades and I'm sort of doing this well, that I might earn it?
So it's not grade-based, it's feedback-based. So it's only from the feedback the teachers are providing to students connected to work that's
But
that's
it,
been indicated as.
But a
affected
student is
on.
regularly updated throughout the quarter.
Yeah,
By
yeah.
the teacher, yes, yes,
If you're a
yes.
ninth grader, you might do in the course of the quarter 4 projects that are around this, and you would get feedback on those 4 projects on a regular basis, and you would know if you're.
And that feedback is in a system like PowerSchool that all stakeholders can access, not just sort of a teacher to student conversation that might not be making it back to the house.
No,
So
parents
is it
can-
documented,
parents
is
can
it
see
written
it.
down?
Parents can see it. Each individual parent can see their own children's work, and the student can see their work, but another parent can see another student.
And just to confirm, I know we have the fancy way of sending secure documents, but report cards will be sent out on paper as well.
Report cards are being sent out in paper. For the first quarter, I don't think we usually do any other time, do we?
How come? I'm just thinking about access, right? If someone doesn't have access to PowerSchool or Canvas, we probably should be sending paper copies.
People can always request paper copies.
Right, but the report cards went out
Today,
today
electronic.
as emails, and we can go through that list again. Everybody has access to email. Whether people check their email is a whole nother thing, but the system tells us if somebody clicks on it and opens it. So we could, like, as you got your report card today, you probably typed in your thing and looked at your report card. But we would know by tomorrow or Monday if somebody didn't, and then we could send it to them. But we are sending it to everybody anyway.
The one other thing I want to just say in connection to your question about the like being on track for honors over time, one of the things the teachers are working hard on in the context of proficiencies and feedback is the opportunity for students to revise. So if there is work that students are doing and they're trying to earn honors distinction and they receive a developing for their classification on where the work is, they are then given the opportunity to revise the work and resubmit it to try to hit the proficient or exemplary mark, which is what's going to earn them the honors distinction.
So that's really important, because if you weren't on track in the first marking period, you can still get on track for the second marking period. And we'd love for you to stay on track for the third and fourth marking period. But I think there could even be a context where somebody was not on track for the first or second marking period, and they could get back on track for the end of the year. Right, because it would be terrible if at a certain point you couldn't do it. Now, if you
Well, at some point, you're gonna be feeling.
right.
Yeah.
And that's actually the conversation the ninth grade team is having. And the context of this work is always about growth mindset, right? We want to reinforce students' growth and learning. And so, yes, at some point, the door has to be closed, but what is that point, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm excited about this. I think this is a good first step at this. We'll have some more student-based data on some surveys. There's anecdotal stuff that pops up all the time. This is very much a work in progress, and we want to continue to make shifts and adjustments throughout the year.
yes, this is student surveys, ninth grade specific student surveys are going to be happening in December, beginning of December, so that we collect some data from students themselves on the experience that they're having.
But when we were presented this in the spring, what I caught for the first time was that opportunities are going to exist at a larger scale for more kids. And it seems that that's what's happening. So that's a real plus. I know that, having talked to my own granddaughter, who's a freshman, that the kinks are there. She continually asked me something, and I said, this is a work in progress, and she understands that. My question is, how have parents on this initial run responded? Has parent involvement increased over the old system. In regards to like, I heard from my daughter, Melissa, that, you know, not, parents showed up for that meeting with ninth graders, but not a lot of them.
Correct.
And I said to myself, well, that's just like it used to be with parents' night. The honors parents showed up, the kids who you really wanted to see as parents didn't.
Like I said, I think that's an area we still have work to do.
Okay.
And I think we are developing some new ideas we want to try to better engage families, meet them where they are. You know, I think we do a lot where we ask parents to come to us and thinking about how we get out to them. How do we engage them more about their own child's work? Because I think that's obviously the most important thing. And so that's why we've been talking about that, like in terms of the teamwork and how that engagement happens. We've been talking about having parents engaged in topic-specific conversations. So the student advisory board is starting tomorrow, and one of the ideas that came up is when the students generate their 3 or 4 topics, and we're having subcommittee meetings with students about those, inviting parents to have parallel conversations that their students are actually engaged in might be an interesting way to engage more parents. So we have some ideas brewing, and we're just going to keep working at it.
No, I'm very pleased with what I see. I thought I've been a real proponent of this anyway, and I just, it kind of starts to look at, this is what we were told is going to happen, and we're starting to see it. Along with, we were told, as I know, when you make a change like this, there are bumps along the road, and those bumps are being addressed. So I'm pleased for my own involvement in this.
I mean, yeah, an interesting side topic when you do your surveys of students is something I never wrapped my head around here is like how important, or not important, it's a bad word, how probative is student surveys? Like how much does it matter what a kid thinks about how they're doing or what they should be doing as opposed to like the teachers and administrators, you know? And I think this will be a first, I've never really wrapped my mind around that. And this will be the first real test of it.
Yeah.
I mean, 90% of the academic things I did in high school was against my will because my parents made me do it. And in retrospect, I'm happy they did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a survey of 15, 16-year-old Rich Mahoney would have rendered you no good data. Yeah, so that, I mean, that's just my own frame of reference.
No, but I mean,
Agreed, but I think in the context of the conversation we were also just having about like changes in society, how do students actually engage? They have to see meaning in their work, understanding their own learning, themselves as learners, like those things are important, and that's what we want to grow in them.
Yeah.
So asking them to try to self-assess a little bit how this is helping them do that, it's important for us to at least get that information from them. Of course, all of this other kind of data has to be considered as well.
Yeah, and students won't sugarcoat it, as I'm an example, it's like, I'll be bold and I'll be blunt, right? So I think the way to find the truth about a lot of situations is to ask students, and you may have people that, you know, please, I promise me that it won't be a 60-question survey, I won't get anything out of that, but there will be students that are thoughtful, and I think those students will shine light.
And I just, go ahead.
You guys.
I was just gonna say on the student thing though, I would say since you are asking them and since we are saying that this is something that we value and is important, they are going to have to see that their input is eliciting a change.
Right.
Or else we have set up a broken system.
Right.
Agreed. Which is why I'm so excited about the work we're starting tomorrow. Because we've been surveying, but we haven't been engaging and actually addressing things that students have been raising.
And I don't question the quality of the surveys or the authenticity of the answers. It's more like, what value is the perspective given? You know, I don't know, it's a theoretical thing for me with education.
And there's a huge change in kids from 9th to 12th grade,
Right.
huge. So it's very hard for most 9th graders to assess themselves and their learning. But if we start asking them, and they're going to grow anyway, no matter what we do, they're going to grow anyway. But they're, you know, I think you learn more and more and more as we go into 10th grade or 11th grade.
And what Ben is doing in the middle school with his staff and the students, they're more used to this now. And we're going to see it more next year because he's doing this at his level. he's asking kids, you have feedback, there's feed in, we want you to do that. And I can understand if Rich is right, because I lived through the era where, yeah, I told you to do your homework and you never did it. But, you know, it's been a change for me, just as a former teacher, to see, okay, in some classes I did that, and a lot of us, like in social studies, we always did that, but in other subjects, that wasn't the context. So it is important that the kids see that there is, okay, my observations count here. And that's all part of the better ideas that we started in 2017. Because I saw that as student voice is very important, so.
So two things, the survey for the ninth graders is 14 questions. And a lot of it's on a Likert scale. There's one open-ended one, and it's very specific to this work, right? So, and I don't want to go into it because I'll mess it up, but I think that'll be helpful. I do remember being in like a research methods class, and the lowest of the low things were self-report. Right, where somebody does a survey, but we do have a history of using some of our surveys to really support significant change. In a couple meetings, we'll have somebody from Railroad Street come and talk about the prevention needs assessment survey, and we've gotten so much useful data out of that to shift all our work around wellness, to create new positions, to write grants. I mean, it's been really remarkable. And then the best thing about it is we've seen dramatic changes in people's thinking and behaviors, right? Particularly connected to substance use, but also all the proactive community recognition. The first time I looked at the data set before I got here, the community was not doing a particularly good job of celebrating young people. And that shifted quite dramatically. So a well-timed and listened to survey could have a huge impact.
And I think knowing most of the teachers that are on the ninth grade team, they're going to say to the kids, we value your opinion. And I've already heard that's been a continuing theme since the beginning of the year, which is, again, another thing that we were told in the spring was going to happen, and it has happened. So I'm really pleased at where we are now, considering that this was a huge, as Rich told me, monumental change, and it was.
Yeah.
It was a monumental change.
And just, I mean, we're talking about student surveys, but I'm assuming similar feedback loops for parents and teachers.
Yes, we have not drafted that, but yes, we absolutely have.
And in some ways it could be parallel, right? Like it's, and again, I'm trying not to go into the details of it, but how young people make sense of the shifts we're making, hearing how their parents are making sense of the shifts they're making, and then seeing if anybody's getting it, or there's a disconnect between the two, or nobody's getting it. Like, that's fascinating. Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. So what I'd like to talk about a little bit is sort of where we are with COVID-19 and what's going on with that. And then this, the work that the policy subcommittee did around a draft policy and some processes there. So let me start with the good news around COVID-19. We hosted a clinic at Du Bois. A bunch of our staff worked at that, and there were 250 5 to 11-year-olds vaccinated, right? They weren't all our students, but a very large majority of them are. So that's great. And then other students are getting vaccinated through pediatricians and pharmacies. Right? So I think we're around 50 or 60% from the 5 to 11-year-olds. The other percentages are like 80 to 85 from 7 to 12. Those are very, very good percentages, and hopefully we'll get the 5 to 11-year-olds up to the 80-85% range. So that's the first thing. The crummy news, and particularly as we go into Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and Christmas, is the numbers ain't getting better, right? It's sort of terrible. The 7-day case rate per 100,000. Does anybody remember what I told you we wanted it to be, like in August or September? If it was this, I'd be really happy.
Under 60.
Under 60, yeah. So you win a lollipop. That would be great. I looked it up today again, and it's 265.
It's the highest it's been since you started reporting.
Yeah, so it's terrible, and it's starting to look like it was on the other end. Now, the good news is a lot of people are vaccinated, so if people get it, they're largely asymptomatic, or they may have the sniffles or something. Particularly the vaccinated people, right? The unvaccinated people, not so much. The other thing I wanted to share is I reconvened my little advisory group. So there are 5 staff people on it. Laura DuPont and Becky Donovan, the nurse from Moneybrook, and then Carol Aberdale and Hillary Bashara, the nurse from Du Bois, and then Kristinella from the high school. And we're meeting both to look at the numbers every 2 weeks or so, and to also look at adjustments we can make in our practices to fine tune stuff. There was new guidance from the commissioner around some of that stuff, and I'll send it out. And what I alluded to at the beginning of the meeting is I'll try to put together a thoughtful and brief email reminding folks as we go into the holidays to try to be deliberate. People make the decisions they're going to make, but we could make better or worse decisions, and the decisions we make will impact us all. There are more schools that have been quarantining whole grades now than there have been in a while. And for the first time in a long time, there are a number of schools that are just shutting down in Massachusetts. And I really don't want to.
Is it more than one?
Yeah, I don't want to do that again.
And DESE is not counting those as
No.
school days, I believe.
No, then you just have to keep
You have to make
going.
them up.
You have to make them up in the back end.
Yeah.
On the back end.
So that's
Yeah,
all.
Peter, do you have a building count of cases that have come up in Berkshire Hills?
I do. Give me just a sec. Sorry, I do that weekly. And one of the things that came up in my little group was we're going to slightly change the format of that. Okay, so in the last 14 days, there's 6 cases at Muddy Brook, 2 at Du Bois, and 2 at Monument. At Muddy Brook, there are 13 students who are quarantined. And at Monument Mountain, there are 4 who are quarantined. Testing to date at Muddy Brook, we've done 189 pool tests, which equates to 1,659 students and staff. And we've had 6 positive results, but those 6 positives didn't come up in the pool testing, they just came up. At Du Bois, this week we did 196 tests for a total number of 1,065, and no positive results have come up in the pool. And at the high school, we didn't do pool testing last week because of Veterans Day, but we did do it this week. And the total number of positive, and so 2,219 people have been tested at the high school, and in all of those tests, one person came up positive in the pool.
Those numbers are really good.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's great.
And obviously, like, the difference between what I broke down too is the vaccination rate,
Right.
Right.
Yes,
which is gonna improve.
should improve.
A
Right.
little bit, yeah.
So one of the things the nurses urged me to do is, particularly as people may be doing a little traveling and seeing family and doing all this stuff, that remind people and send out the link again to sign up for pool testing, because the next 6 weeks would be a really great time to get pool tested, right?
I don't want to propose another survey, but I'm just wondering, I'm wondering if either you as a superintendent or as the building principals can reach out to the individual families that are now quarantined, just to sort of update on how that sort of the receiving of work is going and how sort of caught up they're being kept. Because I know we had that conversation that we can't offer remote learning, but we do sort of have an obligation to make sure that the students that are kept home because of COVID are kept in the loop and are staying on track. So as we sort of continue, we want to make sure that that process of keeping students updated and on track is something that we can refine.
Yeah, I'll let Christy talk to that. I'm guessing advisors, guidance people are reaching out to kids, but.
Yes, but I just want to reiterate again, unvaccinated close contacts are offered test and stay. So as long as they come into school first thing in the morning, get tested, and they are negative with no symptoms, they are actually in school.
But I think Dr. Dillon said there were
He
4.
did, and I think he just misspoke. We had 4 people who were in our test and stay program last week.
So no one was quarantined.
You said quarantine, but you meant test and stay.
I have to check with the nurses on this.
Okay.
So maybe just in the event that there are.
Christie says support to what our policy is.
They wind up having to quarantine, obviously, because they
Well,
can't come to school.
But an unvaccinated person would have to quarantine.
No, they would test and stay.
Test
They
and stay.
participate in test and stay.
Close contact.
An unvaccinated close contact, as long as they are symptom-free, they can come to school, and if they test negative, they are there. The only people at this point who have to be quarantined are the people who test positive.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so just maybe for the future, that if there are people that are kept home because of testing positive, that we're reaching out as a district to make sure that those students are being given what they need.
Yes. No, that's fine. We can do that. Yeah. Right. And again, what I can't say this enough, like if people can get vaccinated, they should get vaccinated. Right, which sort of is a good transition to the next section.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Courtney.
And I don't know if this is actual standard practice, but it came out in a email from my son's university today, which was about, hey, you're leaving, all of the kind of stuff that you would be saying in an email, but then also said, we've got rapid tests at the health center, grab one, and we encourage you to do it on your way back into school. Is that something that?
I think our ability to use the test prohibits us from giving them out to people. Right, I think like the nurses have to administer them in our building. I don't think we can give them out, but I'll check.
And I don't even know if that's what's recommended at this point, but another tool.
Okay.
Just to follow up, so you did a great job advertising for the first 5 to 11 vaccination clinic, and I know there's another one coming up in December, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think the December one is
Is that the second shot?
the second shot.
So do we have another first shot, or is that?
We don't have another first shot. The thinking of the powers that be, and these are people like in public health, is that there were 10 or so clinic sites. So a couple in Pittsfield, Richmond, Sheffield, I think both Lee and Lenox, but maybe just Lee, North Adams, all these other places. They tried to set up enough clinics so that anybody who wanted to get vaccinated could. Whether they're fully meeting the need or not, I'm not sure. And as we run the data on who got, it takes a little while for it to get into the state system, but as we see what the gaps are, I'm happy to reach out to them and create another clinic for the people that missed ours or any of the other ones that they could have done.
I would like to see that, because I think there's some people who don't get vaccinated the first round, and then as they see everyone doing well with it, they're like, okay, I want to do it. So I think in our goal, obviously, is to get as many vaccinated. So I would like to see something either December or even January, we come back another 5 to 11 and capture those people, just so we can maximize the amount of our.
I think you're right, just like, for obvious reasons, some parents were reluctant at first.
Right.
And now that they've seen a lot of kids get it, they'll, if it's offered at the school, they can go there on a Saturday and do it, they'll do it. They're not gonna go through the internet necessarily and try to find a place, and so I think the easier we make it, the better.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, and I'll reach out to the public.
Oh, in the meantime, though, it's okay to publicize the other places like CVS and,
Oh, yeah.
you know, there's a lot of places you can go get immunizations now that are not these clinics. For people who think about it for 2 weeks and go, oh,
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
idea.
We might not want to add more information to our website, but is that on our website, maybe places to get vaccinated?
I think it's, I have to check, I can't even remember. I don't know. I did do a very directed email to people about it in English and Spanish to the Spanish speakers. So I'll do that again. If anybody is looking for a vaccine and happens to be watching this, or you know anybody, apparently there's a clinic at Sheffield this weekend that has many seats. So that would be easy. It's not very far.
Have teachers and staff had an opportunity to get their booster?
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I had an exchange with your husband about that today. We're all eligible to get it. Many of us, included myself, have gotten a booster. And many.
You were able to get a while ago because you're elderly, that's fine.
I know. Where's the Zoom bomber? Yeah, there's so many issues, Rich. You have no idea. Yeah, but so many of us are like, my second shot was in February, right? So I was really on the long end of the window, and I got it a week or so, or 2 weeks ago, something like that. So teachers have the opportunity to do that. I shared, and I'll remind them, there's connected to state guidance, people can take time to get the shot or to recover from the shot and not have it be docked from their pay. The tension is we are short-staffed and everybody's doing double duty, but I'd rather have somebody get a booster and not get sick than delay getting a booster because it's inconvenient and get sick. So I will message that. There's another thing I talked about with the people today, and I'll message that clearly to get staff to get boosters. And there's a possibility, like, we may, the same way you get other booster shots on a regular basis, we may be doing this for the.
It's gonna be like the flu shot.
It's more like getting your teeth cleaned twice a year.
Yeah. Okay, so let me shift gears a little bit. I met with the policy committee, and this is not very different than the policy we talked about as a school committee last week. There are really two substantive changes. So what we're talking about now is draft policy A, which is based on what the Cambridge, Massachusetts Public Schools did. And I think because there are a lot of people on the call, I'll read it and then open it up to talk about. So by January 3rd, 2022, all eligible students must be vaccinated. Failure to obtain a vaccination will not result in exclusion from school, right? So everybody needs to be vaccinated, but we're not going to lock the doors and keep unvaccinated students out. Shoot, I'm sorry, I made a little typo in this. The dates of January 3rd and February 2nd, January 3rd, folks should have their first vaccination, and February 1st, people should have their second vaccination. The second part of the policy would be no unvaccinated age-eligible student will be allowed to participate in the following BHRSD after-school extracurricular activities: athletics, including club and intramural sports, student government, after-school visual and performing arts, all school clubs that meet at the end of the school day, and school-sponsored social events. Okay, so the first part of this is you need to be vaccinated, but if you're not, you don't get excluded from school. The second part is unless you're vaccinated, you're not able to participate in all these extracurriculars. And the distinction between the two is attending school is one's right. So we're not going to keep you from school over this, but the other activities are not a right, they're a privilege. So it's appropriate to exclude you there.
And the real question, and unless you want to talk about B, which is less likely.
Well, let me just talk about B in passing. So B is what Amherst did again, and their Department of Public Health added the COVID-19 vaccination to the list of mandatory vaccines for their community. So the school committee didn't really do anything. The Department of Public Health did. I don't think at this time the Great Barrington Department of Public Health is ready to do this. I've reached out to them. Steve has reached out to them. We're inviting them to a future meeting. They may invite us to a future meeting. It's a 3-member board, and for those of us who live in or work in Stockbridge is tied up with the Tri-Town thing, and part of the reason we're all wearing masks is because it's required in Stockbridge, right? And if you go to the Elm Street Market, you have to wear a mask, and if you go to the coffee shop, you have to wear a mask, and it's posted on the doors. That's not the case in Great Barrington. I think they're recommending, but
Except for town buildings.
Except for town buildings. So Plan B is draft policy B is the other way to do it, but I'm not confident in the likelihood of them doing it, or of them doing it on the timeline that we're trying to do. Some next steps that I put on the bottom of this would be to meet or hear from the Great Barrington DPH formally, right? So I've had some informal conversations, but I think I need to frame a more formal letter that they can discuss and respond to. To potentially schedule a meeting on December 8th, like a special school committee meeting specifically for parent and community feedback. And then at the end of that feedback, a potential vote, or to have the vote at the December 16th school committee meeting. A couple sort of things to consider is if we have an 80 to 85% vaccination rate at the high school and middle school, how much better do we want that rate to be? And does having a mandate like this drive a better rate? And it probably would, but at what cost, right? And the cost could be alienating some people in the community, having them walk away from our schools. But the cost of not doing it could be more people get sick and the schools get closed. So that's something to weigh. And what's sort of interesting is over the next several weeks, as we gather more data, your decision about whether to do a mandate may shift based on how high our vaccination percentages are, right? So within 2 weeks, I came back to you and said the high school and the middle school were closer to 90%, and the elementary school is 80%, and the lower middle school through the first vaccination. You might say, like, mission accomplished, we don't need to do this.
But in theory, if it's followed that the booster is kind of going down the age range, there's a good chance that the high school students will have to be boosted at some point. And so having a policy like this in place will at least encourage that, and then we're not scrambling at that point.
Yeah, no, very, very much so. I'm not arguing for or against the policy. I'm just laying out like a broader context.
But the confusion there becomes, Cory, we haven't even talked about requiring boosters even for staff. Eventually, that I think everyone knows that this is, as Ann said, twice a year you're going to be getting it, but that would have to be part of it. What this is saying is you have to get your first two, or in the case of Johnson 1. But you know, that's not even included in here. Maybe it should be. I'm not saying it should be because I'm agreeing with you. What I want to get out of the school committee tonight is, to me, for the sake of transparency, I want to see us. I'd like to do the December 8th meeting. It could be no one comes, or it could be we have 200 people to comment, and I'd like to hear what people have to say.
So December 8th would be like a public hearing. We could run it like that, a public hearing where we're not talking and we're just listening.
And then after everyone's done, depending on
Then
the
we go
time,
back
we would
into
talk,
regular session.
or we would wait till the 16th, depending, you know, if it's 3 hours, we're probably not gonna be in the mood to talk. But to me, that, I want to give everyone a chance to speak before we make a decision. For some people, this is not a controversial decision. For other people, you know, I would call no-brainer maybe. For other people, this is really, really a tough decision if we make it. So we should really hear what people have to say.
Have there been other school districts that have taken an approach similar to the Amherst Department of Health? I know it's sort of, it's difficult to compare, that isn't necessarily not resulting in exclusion from school and is basically a blanket statement saying that all students are required to, or is the Cambridge school sort of the model for school districts?
Well, we can't require, but only the Department of the Board of Health in Great Barrington can require. We can't require students to have it, to attend school.
Okay,
It's
so
very
there's not even a
nuanced.
question of, okay.
Yeah, it's very nuanced, but we can't do that. That's excluded. We can go, there's a Board of Health meeting. It's a little confusing what date it is, but it's in the beginning of December that a few of us could go, ask to get on the agenda. See, but the Board of Health has been fairly conservative in Great Barrington, I guess, or about mandating masks, and they've talked about vaccinations, but they don't seem to have the appetite yet to do that.
And a couple other things. I mean, there's some school districts that are sort of in the middle, like Berkshire Town, I think said you have to do it to participate in athletics and extracurriculars, right? Which probably gets you part of the way there. Berkshire Community College is making everybody be vaccinated to attend college on campus.
Most colleges, that's what it is.
Right.
And I know there was a lot of sort of just hesitation at the last meeting. So has there been any discussion with the powers that be about the legal counsel about sort of just making sure that at the December 8th meeting, we're covered and protected?
Yeah, no, I talk to our attorney sadly almost daily. It would be bold for us to do this, but other districts have done it, and as it's structured now, it's defensible. But anything anybody does in this country is also open to people being angry about it and trying to take legal action about it, right?
And it's fascinating because, as you pointed out, depending on how our students get vaccinated, it may be that it's not worth the controversy if we have a 90% vaccination rate. To other people, maybe.
To that point, Peter, do you have any way to ballpark who would be, what percentage of the kids would be in any one school subject to the medical or religious exemption? So like of that 10 to 15% that's unvaccinated, how many are we never gonna get?
I don't know, and I could go back and check with the nurses on it. The religious one is really problematic in Massachusetts because it's poorly structured and defined, and all you have to do is.
You look at what the state agencies are requiring now for that, I think I agree the statute's pretty wide open, but I think you can really tighten that up.
Right.
The medical one is interesting, and I'll defer to Ann. Other than allergies to a certain ingredient in it, a preservative, not sure that there's been any proof that there's any medical exemption otherwise.
Right, I haven't heard of anything else that would do that.
I have received some healthcare providers' notes that certain people have certain medical issues that they're discouraging them from getting it. But it seems highly speculative and not.
I think you would have to
research based.
I think you would have to consult with your team of doctors who you now have to talk to them on the individual cases. I think it would be by individual student. And if you saw, and I'm not saying there would be 6 students, all from the same doctor, saying that they had a medical reason, you'd have to look at the validity of it.
Yeah.
And this is very difficult.
I didn't mean to spit out stuff, I know
No,
you're
no.
going to schedule
But
it.
the other thing that I will reiterate, and I've said it before, our staff vaccination rate is just about perfect. Right? It's like 99.6%.
Staff has been very cooperative from the first day we did this,
Yeah.
and it's, they should be applauded.
Yeah, it's a really big deal, and that's everybody. That's teachers and custodians and paras and food service, everybody.
And our goal is to keep the school.
Well, that's
schools open.
I was gonna
That's
say.
our goal. That's it. We're not here to get into a political argument. We're not here to do anything else but to keep the schools open.
And to keep kids in the school.
Yep.
I think that's why you have such a high staff rate of vaccination.
Can I-
They want to keep the schools open.
Specific question, just on the first bullet of draft policy A, what is the point of writing all age eligible students must be vaccinated if failure to obtain the vaccination will not result in exclusion from school?
I think the intent of when the Cambridge folks wrote this was to put a stake in the ground, right? There's an implicit contradiction.
Right.
Which is very confusing. I feel like.
But the alternative would be like, wouldn't it be great if people kind of got vaccinated? Like, I think you're stuck with writing it that way, but I'm open to somebody writing it up.
Sure.
Well, I'm not even suggesting this is a path we should go down, but, you know, there's a lot of other incentives besides exclusion from school that you could, limit other things that they can do. I mean, at my college, they had a lot of things they tried to enforce, paying parking tickets, returning books and doing that. You couldn't get your transcript until you did it. So, we're not the school won't be releasing transcripts of anyone who's not vaccinated. Would grab a whole lot of people in senior class.
I would even say eating alone, right? So the time you have to take a
Yeah,
mask
you
off,
can't-
you can't eat with the general population, you have to be separated
I'm
and
not sure
alone.
public school. That's-
But then starting
The transcript thing will get us in a lot of legal
Yeah.
trouble.
I'm not saying I'm proposing it,
Right.
but like there's a lot of other, I think Julian is setting out already a better example. There's things short of exclusion from school that you can do.
I don't know.
But then,
Well, it could be testing. There could be,
You require testing. That's already been upheld by every court that it's been.
there could be testing every day when you walk in school, like the kids now who.
to get back to Corey's
That's
point,
more reasonable one.
probably as we get closer, there's a better way to write this, and that would be what we just said, what our point of doing this is, and why we're not excluding kids from school, because we can't.
Right.
And just putting a narrative out there that
that is not as confusing as this. We're probably not quite there yet because we haven't made any decisions, but I think that's.
No, but
Makes sense.
the point of bringing this as a draft was to work through it.
Yeah.
Right, so,
No criticism.
a little preamble about, we want to keep our schools open.
Yeah.
Would be great.
Yeah.
Right, and
Is there magic to December versus January to taking this up?
I was gonna bring that up,
Okay.
because I think Thanksgiving and Christmas, let's see where the dust settles. Because there's a lot of stuff that's gonna go on between Thanksgiving and having Christmas. Dr. Fauci's already talking about it. I mean, on a family basis, we've talked about it. Melissa's head of the, does program development, the BDC. She's talking about it.
But I'm not sure that's gonna affect, well, maybe it will, it won't affect.
Well, you're gonna
my
have,
decision, but
I think what it's gonna do is, people have asked me about masks, and I brought it up earlier before the meeting about Hopkinton now, because people are saying to me, when are we gonna get rid of masks? I had a long email from a parent on Sunday about the opinion of masks. And I just think talking about loosening up on masks is just heresy. I don't think we should be doing that at all.
let's not get into that, because we're not doing that.
Yeah. and
But
I just-
December 8th, Rich, the reason, we talked about the holidays of policy, that's why we, I won't say rushed it, but had it December 8th before we got into the holiday season, really into it, where then parents would say, you know, we're just too busy, we're not gonna be able to make the meeting, but we want to comment. So.
No, if you don't do it in December, you gotta push it to January.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
right, that was the thinking.
That was the thing. We could do it in January, but we also thought the sooner we enacted this, if we were going to, then the better it would be for our schools.
Well, my point is, if cases suddenly jump the first and second week after January, that might be the time to discuss vaccines. Because it will make it obviously that there's a problem. Right now, Berkshire County leads the state in cases. The
Right.
guy for BMC just said it yesterday,
Yeah,
but we're
also-
not in hospitalizations though. So that shows vaccination effectiveness.
I think it's important that we both afford ample time for public comment, and then after that, enact it as soon as we can, because the efficacy of it, and Ann, you can speak to this better than I, is while you have some protection from the first dose, the significant protection is 2 weeks after the second dose. So even if we do this, like we're to February break before this is impactful, and if the path of the virus continues as it is now, even then is a little light.
We don't want any more first graders to come down with this. And the way to do it is to tell people that it's required. And you have to say that they won't be excluded from school, but still vaccines are required for attendance at Berkshire Hill schools.
Of course, there's less incentive for the younger kids to get it by our policy, because there's less after-school activities for them. That's just unfortunate.
And Chrissy and I have had lots of debates about this, and everybody, like, the kids that stand to benefit the most from after-school activities, to exclude them from it borders on being immoral, right?
But there's a lot of outreach we can do. Vim has done a great job, all kinds of groups and subgroups can help to bridge those gaps. And whether it's parent to parent or student to student for the high school age kids or middle age kids, all of these people can help to bring a lot of pressure, and we're the big group, but it's using all of those pieces to help people understand that it's important, and the school system thinks it's really important.
And what I'd like to do is we do that, as we collect public feedback, is keep coming back to you all with the data, right? Because if we could get to a number that people are comfortable about, like if the goal is to get to 90%, and it may be more or less than that, and we're at 90%, then we would have met our goal. That would be great.
that'd be great, but I don't think you want to put this off until after the holidays. The numbers are gonna go up. They're not gonna go
No,
down.
I take that back. I wasn't in, a couple, so in terms of the unvaccinated population at like the high school specifically, have we done any direct outreach to the unvaccinated people, like, and on like a health level, or do we have any insight as to why people aren't vaccinated? Is there some subset of that 10 to 15% that just need just a subtle push?
We're a little gun shy because they yell at us a lot, but I can dig into that some.
I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around this 10 to 15% that's not vaccinated. And if, I'm not saying I agree that 90% is the goal, and I think 100% is the goal, but like how do we get there? And this is maybe one tool, but it's certainly not the only one. May not be the best one. And maybe it is, but,
I mean, we can do something, like, I could work with the nurses to do a targeted email, right? So at the high school, it's like 50 people, right? Which isn't.
I mean, here's what I'll say. From the time I went to high school, the whole time Bill was there, now Christy's leading the place, we've had 1 billion problems of trying to get student behavior to change. And the administration and the teachers have successfully done it every time.
Right.
Why do we need to blow this up into a big governmental thing if we haven't exhausted our efforts with our boots on the ground, with our teachers and with administrators and our nurses who are interfacing with these kids every day to try to get us to whatever the goal is?
And Rich, I absolutely agree with you, because there is a point, and I don't know if it's 85%, 90%, that the benefits outweigh and it's not really risk, but the controversy, and take away from our attempt and our successfulness in putting a really good education out there and changing how the culture of the schools are. We're doing a lot of good things, and we don't want to see that all of that is kind of put aside by a lot of people just for a political controversy.
Well, and the piece of it that may make sense, which we've had some success with, is we get as many people to be vaccinated as we can, and everybody who's not vaccinated has to participate in the pool testing.
Yeah, that's.
If our numbers get high enough, if our vaccination rate gets high enough, that may be the way to do it. Some people may not agree with it. Some people may say it's either 100% or nothing. I get that.
I'm very just torn on the whole timing of the thing. Like, I think, I get the urgency of it, but.
So really our two choices, from what I'm hearing, and I'm not hearing from everyone, so, other people, please speak, but our two choices really are the December 8th, or put it off to January when we have really much better numbers of vaccinated.
But still have the December 8th as the
We could, but we
See, I
don't
like-
have the numbers.
I just like the idea, we need to hear from people, I think we know what we're gonna hear. And that public hearing would have your guidelines that you've always expressed and
You
that
can
we
just
all
speak for-
I
support.
want to discuss those guidelines.
Yeah, we will.
And,
I don't think if you're not a member of the school community, if you don't have a kid there, if you're not a teacher there.
Well, the same
ones.
ones,
I don't give a voice to this meeting. I don't care.
So Rich, the ones that I did previously was you had to have some association with the community. You either had to live in the town, pay taxes, a school choice parent, but a tuition parent, I think they should have a voice. But I don't think someone who just has an opinion from Pittsfield, who has no connection to the school district, should be able to.
You lost me with just because you're a taxpayer in the town.
okay, well, we can
We'll talk about that.
My other point is that we have the guidelines, whatever, we'll debate about it. And then we wait, and I don't think we need to vote on December 16th. Because I think the numbers are gonna show that we have to do something after in January. It's just obvious to me.
So you're saying that the COVID numbers are gonna persuade people to get vaccinated?
I think with the cases, yeah, I think we're gonna see what's going on in Europe.
Yeah, I think that
Another way.
the 15% that we're dealing with.
Oh, we're
is
talking
not
about kids, we're
gonna
only
be-
talking about 50 kids at the high school.
Yeah, but I mean, in the county and in South Berkshire, I think it's gonna be, it's just, my own feeling is that we should let's see where the dust settles after all these holidays and all these gatherings and everybody talking about taking masks off in their house and all that stuff. Let's see, but we'll hear from the community December 8th. And then our first meeting in January.
But I think what Ann and many other people would argue, I might argue too, is that if we wait and see the genie's out of the bottle, we can get it back in.
Yeah, why would we wait?
Why
We're
wait?
already at 260,
All right, yeah.
when that was not a number that like was even on our radar.
I say that we do the December 8th. We specifically say we've made no decision. We're waiting to hear from input from a set of people. And then on the 8th or the 16th, we make a decision whether we're going to vote or not vote and how we're going to vote. But I think we listen first. That's why we do these. And, you know, specifically tonight, no one's come out with a large opinion here that this is the way it's got to be and this is how I'm going to vote, because we should hear from people. And I think, you know, I think that's the way to do it. And we may never take a vote after hearing from people and looking at the vaccination rate. Maybe as a consensus, we'll say we don't need to vote, or maybe we will vote.
I see the logic of what you said.
Okay.
And so would we schedule,
My own logic is now illogical, because you're right.
would we schedule a policy subcommittee to meet before December 8th? I'm just not seeing it on the agenda.
No, the policy subcommittee has really turned this over to the school committee now. Now, we could schedule a meeting to do the wording.
Yeah, I'm
If
just
we
thinking,
wanted to- What's that? I didn't hear.
I just think we want to have a clear, concise policy to talk about. Like, we don't want to have looming ideas. We don't want to have sort of this just bunch of ideas that we're all throwing out. We want to have sort of a clear stated policy that we're going to discuss.
If it appears on the, after the 8th, that we're going to vote on something and not on the 8th.
Can I say something?
Who's that?
This is Diane.
Yeah, first thing.
I think that our policy should also reflect that we are running a school and we're bringing people together at a time when there aren't large gatherings. But in bringing kids to school, we have an obligation to protect them, protect the people who work at our schools, and also protect our community. And so vaccination will do that.
That's an excellent point, and I'll take back what I said about not having a policy meeting, because I think what we should bring to the 8th is a more refined policy.
And I like what Diane said, like what you call a whereas clause, like what's this, a reason for the policy.
A preamble.
A preamble, there you go.
So what I'll do, if it's okay, is I'll take a crack at writing a better policy to be the point of discussion
At a policy
meeting, and then the committee can use that as a straw man and make it better.
And I would just put forward that one of the things to discuss would be not to exclude kids from all these activities, but that unvaccinated kids get tested as they walk into school in the morning.
Are we equipped to do that?
Yeah, I don't know if we are, but I'm just, you know, that's one option, or maybe
Let's talk about that with the
they get
policy.
tested every third, you know, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday or something, but that there's an actual testing that goes on.
So at the December 8th meeting, just so I get my chronology here, at the December 8th meeting, we're going to look at a policy that's definitive with a preamble. We're going to get parent and community feedback on that policy.
So let me just go over it. What would normally happen before we open it to discussion is someone would explain the policy. So Peter would explain the policy. I mean, people are coming into this, we got to assume people haven't read the policy yet.
Right.
And the understanding that the school committee hasn't made a decision yet, that it's not a done deal. We're waiting to hear from public input. And then at the end of that meeting, or more likely on the 16th, is when we would vote on the policy, if that's what we choose to do.
My only comment would be on parent and community feedback. Shouldn't they have something to look at before December 8th? To give,
And what if as
Well,
part of the policy, we made it easier for people to get vaccinated? Say by having a CHP van come to school so that parents don't have to bring their kids to the pediatrician or CVS or somewhere else.
I mean, yes, I agree with you. We should make it easier. If one previously had wanted to get vaccinated, we held, I don't know, 30 clinics. Ben, how many clinics did we hold in your school?
There was a lot.
Yeah.
It was all some.
Right.
I was at some.
So the one thing that came up, I had people send me emails throughout my meetings, which I like. From the way the state's doing the testing, if we decided to do an unvaccinated kids getting tested, we might actually have to foot the bill and not the state foot the bill. So I want to look into that some more.
And the numbers would be astronomical if we had to pay for it.
Well, if we did 50 kids 3 times a week and paid for that for 20 weeks.
That's just high school.
That's just high school.
No, right, it's just the high school.
But right now, the kids there's a testing program going on that we don't pay for, or we do pay for?
No, we don't.
We don't pay for it.
Okay, so already one test per week per kid is already covered,
Right,
so.
right.
At one point, I think the number was $35 a test, if I remember correctly.
Man, I think the pool test is a lot less, but the rapid tests are like 50.
Why don't we pay $500 to each unvaccinated kid that has been vaccinated? I'm not joking, why don't we do that?
Let's come up with a policy.
Okay, I think we have had a really good conversation. Do you want to move on?
Yeah, and the only thing I'm gonna say is that when we need to advertise this December 8th meeting, and we need to stay neutral in the advertisement, so that everyone knows that we're just there to listen, not to be swayed one way. We're not trying to sway anyone. First, we just want to hear from people.
I agree, but I do think you should put, and maybe people are different, is potential vote.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we've done that in like budget hearings, and we're like, oh god, the pitchforks are coming, we're gonna, and then like everyone's like, yeah, it's a great budget, and we can't even vote. So
That's right.
Yeah, no,
Fair for all.
I don't disagree. It's more gonna be time than anything else.
No, I don't think we'll vote that night, but you don't want to box yourself in with the.
No, you're absolutely right. And
It needs to be put in that invitation, who's invited, that it's only people associated with the school or the school district, whether you're gonna let town members.
Rich and I will talk about this and try to
Yeah,
figure out the right.
I don't see how you can rule out a taxpayer who has no
Well, I
choice.
Well, I mean, the question is how you want me to advertise it.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So if I put an ad in the Eagle, everybody and their brother's coming. If I use the district email list, then school people are coming.
Right, exactly.
And if you use social media, people will, and don't forget this is Zoom, people will call in from California to tell us what they think.
Or do other things.
It's definitely got to be, people on the Zoom call have to be identified before they speak. There's got to be some.
Yeah, no, that's not my concern. My concern really is, and CTSB doesn't do this, but for this meeting, the webinar format might be much better.
Yeah, I think after tonight, we have to revisit our online infrastructure and how it's handled.
Yeah, because I know some people who hate the webinar format. That's what we do in the town. But it's, first of all, I actually can see 10 people who are, if they're not in the room, but the other school committee members. And second of all, people can't unmute themselves and speak.
That's the key.
That's what you need.
That's
And their name has to come up. You need to see their name before you unmute them.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is if you unmute someone and then it starts, you can just remove them because you know who it is immediately.
Right.
Okay. So we'll have to talk about that before the 8th, because the 8th is likely to could have a couple hundred people on it, and it's in this format. You know, CTSB did a good job tonight, but it's very hard to keep control.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's move
Yeah,
ahead.
that's a good conversation. Thank you.
You're done, I think, Peter.
Yes.
Policy subcommittee has met, we will meet again. We already talked about that, buildings and grounds,
Not met.
evaluation, technology has not met. Turn the page over, finance subcommittee,
We met earlier today and reviewed real rough outlines for just gross numbers in the budget. We weren't provided, didn't go through line items. I would say, I would describe the reaction of the committee as cautiously optimistic. We seem to be, in the same assessment ballpark that we were last year, without any, with a lot of unanswered questions on the income side, and everyone seems to be somewhat optimistic that that will work out as well. So, but obviously, as you guys know, at the December 16th meeting, we're going to be back to you with a more kind of the draft preliminary, no commitment budget model.
So, Steve, anything else?
I think at this point, we had a letter.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did. We had a letter from Tori Kajeski. So this would be under written communication. Dear school committee, after happening on the portion of your meeting broadcast by Berkshire Edge, this morning I heard the end of a discussion and a vote about whether or not to allow the Waldorf High School football player to join the Berkshire Hills team. I'm sorry to hear that your decision was ultimately one of exclusion in our community rather than inclusion. Your discussion especially concerned me as it did not take into account that the Waldorf community is already part of the R.S.D community. It's important to consider that many families in the district have opted for a kind of hybrid education between Rudolph Steiner School, the Waldorf High School, and Berkshire Hills. This has been going on for decades. Many examples of this are easy to provide if you'd like them. As a parent of one of the families, I think it's important for you to recognize that these communities, local Waldorf schools in Berkshire Hills, are already very much engaged with each other. This is by virtue of our local proximity and mutual contributions to our community. I very much understand prioritizing resources for student athletes in the district. However, the Waldorf High School's request to join an underpopulated athletic program, the football team, is very reasonable. Sounds like the Waldorf High School did the due diligence in following appropriate protocol, and the decision was then brought before you. Unfortunately, I didn't hear all the discussion. The Edge cast was focused on the student vaccine mandate decision around this topic. With that said, I don't believe a compelling argument against joining the Waldorf High School for this upcoming football season was made. What I heard was a division between us and them and an interest in exclusion for exclusion's sake. Hopefully you can hear them yourselves with a reflection that another listen might offer. If a few athletes can play on the Spartan team, isn't it good for everyone? For the Waldorf kids and the Mining Mountain kids, how can it not be? This is a short-sighted decision that begs you to look at your interest in an influential position in the community. Your mission to detract and create a far more inclusive community at VHRSD is one of the truly models that intention, Would you like to foster collaboration? In small communities, we must rely on and support the critical collaborative nature of our institution, resources, and agencies. Given that these are decisions that can hopefully be revisited yearly, I hope you will consider the implications of this kind of exclusion in the future, especially if you cannot reconsider the decision you made this week. Very best, Tori Kajeski, parent of a senior in Monument. Any other public comment? Any school committee comment?
Yes, this is Diane Singer.
Yes.
I was really uncomfortable with the discussion that we had on this topic because I felt that we usually are more thoughtful in the way we make choices for students. And I felt that this decision set a precedent for us excluding kids for what I thought were not good reasons. I didn't hear any good reasons. And I had a really hard time with this decision. I think that we always try to think about what's good for our students and people in our community. And I think this letter just gets to the heart of us excluding students for reasons that I also did not understand.
Anyone else?
I guess I would have liked to have heard, we got a list of pros and cons from Christy and Carl, but it would have been helpful for me as a school committee member to hear an actual recommendation from them, to hear the football coach, to hear from someone on the Waldorf side. And I feel like that certainly was lacking from the conversation. And so I would just ask if or when it could be put back up in case those things can be put in place.
I have no problem if no one objects to us bringing this back with a recommendation from the high school, and I think the football coach and having the head of the school also be there, if no one objects. So during that, we will arrange for that to happen. Anyone else?
I think, I several years ago tried to address the review or a policy around the co-op situation in general.
I agree.
And we all blew by it, and then a couple years later, we have controversy on it. I think we need at some point, and it's a big lift, and I don't want to ask it now, and particularly because Carl has been working like round the clock on all these other issues and doing a great job. But this is like the problem, right? You know, good fences make good neighbors, good agreements make good partnerships, and good policies make good programs. And we have ham-handed away through this co-op thing for 30 years. I'm not sure the co-op program is good for anybody on either side of the fence. There's never been any strategic planning around it. It goes from one fad to the next. So I would like some review and development of a policy around why we co-op people and why we don't. And at some point, some strategic planning around how we view our athletic department over the next 5 and 10 years and where we're going, so that we can have real informed decisions as these things come up and go, and people propose new sports and want to eliminate sports, and we find out whether they need to be supported by what a metrics is, what type of sport needs to be supported by a co-op and what sport doesn't. And this could be like a project a year out or 2 years out, but I suggested it 4 or 5 years ago, and everybody was in favor of kind of looking at it, and we didn't have a athletic director then. But I think we got to put that on the agenda because we're going to continue to run into controversies around our sporting program unless we don't have some good rules for the road.
Yeah. Now, and with co-ops, it's happened more than once that the host of the co-op has changed and the school committee has no knowledge of it. You know,
I think we're supposed to approve co-ops every year. I've said that before, but that's.
But, you know, and I'll just make an example. Let's say the team was being hosted by Lee, and then Lee couldn't host it anymore, so Lennox hosted it. I found out, at least by reading it in the paper, you know, when there was a score, and I said, when did that happen? So I think there's a lot of things to tighten up around this, and I think that a policy, and I did say this when I talked to a few people, would take the emotion out of it. And okay, this is our policy, and if you meet the criteria, then yes, we'll do the co-op. If you don't meet the criteria, we won't. It takes all the emotion out of it and all the second guessing, and I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I think what Rich said is well stated, and we did talk about it a few years ago, and it dropped off the table. I think built into it, we have to look at timing around things, because when decisions have to be made at a certain point tied to each season and when things happen, and I just think we should be deliberate around that, right? So if you should have voice, and if we're able to do it, but we should backward plan it enough so So it works for kids and host institutions and everybody. Right.
And I agree with everything you said, but in typical fashion, like this district always hits the high road and does the right thing, and we had a football team, the 11th hour decided to just co-op with another school and screw it. You know what I mean? Like we don't wanna, we're on the co-op side, we're always the givers. Everyone else is always the takers, we're always the thoughtful planners, and everybody else just does what they wanna do.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Okay, so we will arrange for that to happen. I won't guarantee it'll be next meeting or the meeting after. We want to get everyone together. I'm sure they can all be there, but we will do that.
So we're gonna revisit this.
Yes.
Well, I think there are two things, right? There's revisiting this and
And
then
then looking at the co-op.
and looking at the co-op in a more thorough way. And I'd love to think that some other district that's a teeny bit bigger than us figured this out and we could potentially model some stuff.
I was gonna say
like they
that
did.
we're not here to reinvent something that maybe already exists.
And it's something I think you mentioned, or Bill mentioned, or somebody, maybe Diane mentioned too, is, every other public board I've ever been at, if the person making the ask isn't there, it's passed over. And then we'd never do that here. We did it once. Simon Rock was trying to, wanted some proposal.
Yep.
The administration just put it on, and then we actually held it till they come. I mean, I'm not the chair, you're the chair, I don't know what the rules are, but that should be, that, you go to the select board, a special permit, a liquor license, whatever, if you're not there, they just politely pass you over to the next thing.
Yep.
And we can't, gotta stop putting the administration, I feel like they're getting too much blame for the, disjointed, debate around this topic. If somebody wants something from us, they present all the materials, they put it all together, and they come here and make the ask.
Now, you're absolutely right. It doesn't happen here enough so that we really, and I'll take full blame. This would not have happened at a select board meeting because that's the way, that's like every meeting, we have one or two people make those kind of presentations and that's the way it's done. This was kind of, we don't, this
I
is.
mean, Mass
acceptable.
Electric pays these guys to come to your meetings just to say, hey, I wanna move the poll for you.
Right, exactly.
Well, and occasionally people reach out to me on stuff like this, and I'm the first contact, so I can do a better job. We have had Steve Sagarin come to these meetings before. I don't remember what it was for, but he has been here before, and it would be easy. I think he would have liked to have been invited.
Yeah, and so, we learn a lesson, and from here, we'll do a better job of that. I absolutely agree with you. Okay, if no one has anything else to say, public or school committee, by unanimous consent, we have 2 minutes to kick off for the Patriots, so we are adjourned.
Okay.